Janet, we are ready.
Thanks, John. And can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes, we're good.
Thanks. Okay. Just to reiterate too what John said about things being available afterwards. As we go through this, I'm going to mention several different examples of what I'm talking about, but not go into great detail. But there's links to all of them on the handout that I have. So if you want to look for more ideas or further ideas of what I'm talking about, all of that will be there. Okay. So we're going to look at 6 things that are working, 6 large themes that are working, and then some ideas under them. So first of all, let me get rid of this meeting controls. Okay. Something that works is if we remember and plan for the reality that one size doesn't fit all. Those meeting controls keep popping up, so sorry if you can't see the top. If those of you who were on the previous session, Cassie talked about this a lot when she was talking about young adults, but it's true for all ages. And we don't need research to tell us this, because our own reality tells us this, that adults are more likely to be different than they're the same. Certainly, if you think of people in their 60s, they have different needs than people in their 40s. But think of the 60-year-olds that you know, not that any of you are in there. They're not all the same. They're very different. So when I was Director of Adult Faith Formation for the Archdiocese of Detroit, I did a survey of our parishes of best practices. And one of the questions I asked them was, as you tell me about this best practice, who was the intended audience? And almost everybody answered and said, all adults, the whole parish. But more and more research tells us that what works best is when something is planned for communities of like interest, for groups that have some commonality. So many parishes tell us that they have better responses today to offerings that are specifically for a specific group. So scripture study programs that are planned especially for men seem to attract more men than if it's just a generic scripture study. An offering for parents of young children meets a specific community of like interest, and probably will attract more parents of young children than if it's just a generic program on parenting. Not that that isn't worthwhile too, but the more specific it can be to someone's needs, the more they're going to respond, because they know it's for them. Seth Godin, who's the past director of marketing for Yahoo, says in one of his books, a product for everyone rarely reaches anyone. So one of the things that means, I think, is that at different stages, adults have different experiences. They have different needs. They have different approaches to life. Their questions, how they relate to life, the things they do are going to be different. Their questions are different at different stages. So our challenge is, how do we plan opportunities for different age groups? Or do we just do generic programs? Now, a lot of times we can do generic programs, but also within that generic program, specialize it and do things so that different groups can talk about what does this mean for me in my life stage. So another reality that works is, in addition to paying attention to the stages of adult life, is also paying attention to what's happening in life around us. And that might seem just obvious. Again, in the last session, Tracey talked a lot about this in regard to young adults, and that perhaps that's one of the ways the church has failed young adults, is because they don't listen to what's going on around them. We used to say that our call was to pray, to study, with scripture in one hand and the newspaper in the other. Today, maybe it would be more accurate to say to pray, to study, with scripture in one hand and our phones in the other, because that's where we get the news of what's happening. So the question for us is, what's happening in the lives of the average adults in the pew and those who are not in the pew? What's happening in the life of your community, your church, the nation, our world? What are the things that are directly affecting the people that we are serving? What do they have questions about? What is it that they need a safe space to talk about? What is it that they need a little time and nudging to remember what scripture, what our tradition says are the ways that we can get through some of the challenges we might be facing? One thing that brought this very clearly home to me was when I was ministering in a parish. One year, from mid-September to the first week of November, we had 5 children die from a house fire, from cancer, and from 3 different car accidents. I had a whole adult faith formation program and process planned for months to come. But I soon realized that's not where people are. They're not going to come. That's not where their questions are. That's not where their grief is. That's not what they're wondering about. And so I scrapped all that, and we did different things to look at grief and how do you respond to people who are going through one of the most horrendous griefs there is, that of the death of a child. Where's God in these catastrophic experiences? And we had lots of response, and we provided all kinds of different things, not just talks, but small groups to talk about it. So we were trying to respond to what was going on in our lives around us. So do we take advantage too of the happenings that occur all the time in our culture, our world? These events are not sponsored by the church, but they're events that key into the core values of who we are as Catholics. Do we take advantage of those times and plan things to help people look at that, especially from a faith perspective? What did you do, or what could you do to help people reflect on what happened to them, what happened to the church, what happened to the world during COVID? If we ignored that, or are still ignoring people's fears, their questions, as well as not helping them to reflect on how they grew, how they persevered, we're not meeting them where they are. And I think people today still they haven't processed that whole experience. And so are we going to just then not learn from it, or repeat the mistakes that surfaced because of that? So what have we done? What could we do? Because that's the reality of people's lives. A third strategy that works is small faith sharing groups. From the very beginning of our church, small groups have really been the support and the sustenance of faith for individuals, for parishes, and for making a difference in the world. Tracey talked a lot about listening and conversations with young adults. That's what happens in small groups. Small groups who trust one another, who can listen to one another, who can validate each other, and can help each other to grow. So small faith sharing groups move people from rows to circles. And that happens both literally, not in a classroom setting, which I think is the worst setting for any kind of adult gathering, but it also happens in actuality. People are co-learners. People are participants. They're not passive. They're not being lectured to. We're all in this together, which is what the church should be. So the reason for gathering and the focus for small groups might be different, but most effective small groups include these 5 elements which really flow in and out of one another. Certainly, everything is rooted in prayer, and small groups take that seriously. Learning, especially rooted in scripture and connecting that to our everyday experiences. Conversations, caring support, and a small group that's a faith-sharing group, that's a Catholic Christian group, doesn't stop just there with themselves, but they go out in service and outreach. There's a lot of different kinds of small groups. We could say that some are study or faith-sharing groups. These groups meet to study scripture, recent books, a video series, justice and peace issues, or a variety of other topics. There's also gift discovery and strengths development groups. One of my GEMS newsletters tells about a parish in Ohio that used the Strengths Finders tool, and then they formed small groups to help people talk about their gifts and to support people in their gifts, and not just in their gifts to give back to the parish, which of course is important, but also giving their gifts to the community, to the world, making a difference, being prophets in our world. There's accountability groups, which meet in order to help participants face the challenges of everyday life and become better people. And coupled with that too would be support groups. These groups address different challenges that people might be experiencing and offer encouragement and assistance of others who are facing or have faced similar situations and difficulties. So this could include all kinds of things. They might focus on marriage, on empty nest syndrome, divorce and separation, death of a spouse, death of a child, depression, parenting teenagers, parenting young children, living with cancer or other diseases, being a caregiver, family members in the military, grandparents raising grandchildren. That list could go on. And the reality is that every parish doesn't need to do everything. But is this a situation where we can now work together and collaborate and partner with each other so that different groups might be offered in different parishes? several years ago, my 6-year-old great nephew died suddenly. And the day he died, my niece's husband said to me, "Where is there a support group? I know that we can't get through this alone." And I was working in the Archdiocese at the time, and I didn't know of any. But I went to our family life office too, because I thought they would. And they didn't know of any. They also investigated and couldn't find anything. I continued to research it and I found them, but at a lot of different non-denominational churches or other denominations, which is great because we could also partner with those. But are we doing that? Are we making resources available to other people in this kind of a support? What was interesting about small groups is that during the pandemic, it seems that small groups were the first ones to adapt to the demands of living during the pandemic. It probably was for a lot of reasons. It wasn't a gigantic group. They were small groups. Also, they had experienced the power of support from a small group. And during these pandemic times, they knew they still needed that. And so they were some of the first ones to adapt successfully to ongoing support and formation during the pandemic. So a fourth and a fifth strategy of something that's working is to curate, not just always create. And when we do that, it then enables us to provide for our people playlists. So I think our role as catechetical leaders, adult faith formation leaders today, is to be curators, to research and know about a wide variety of content and experiences that are available from lots of sources. And again, we don't have to do this by ourselves. How are we networking with other leaders in the area near us to do this research and knowing what's out there? And then to assess and evaluate their quality and their appropriateness, because not everyone might be of high quality and it might not be appropriate at this time for your parish. And then to organize the content so that it's easily accessible and understandable and findable. So to make it available, the different experiences, content, how do we deliver what we have found? And so one of the ways to deliver that content is through playlists. And playlists are sequences of activities and resources, usually on one topic. They're designed for individuals or for small groups. And one of the easiest ways to make them available is through a digital platform. So what playlists do is make adult faith formation available 24/7, whether the parish is open or not. And they also reiterate that one size doesn't fit all, because they can be organized around different needs and interests, different stages of life, the diversity of people's spiritual and religious needs. Many parishes are using these today, and they design them in their own unique way. So one parish designed them according to how much time people have. So they said, if people have 10 to 15 minutes, these are some things that they might be able to do. If they have, If they have 10 to 30 minutes, they provided some other ideas of things they could do. And then for people who have more than 30 minutes, they provided some additional ideas for them to delve deeper. Here's what one parish did for Easter, for families. So it contains videos, questions, prayer ideas, things to do, and then additional ideas for people who also want to go deeper and to do something more. Here's a playlist from a parish specifically for adults who are living through uncertainty with faith. And so there were many different ideas given of things that they could use for reflection and action. So here are some of the things: watching, reading, writing, and some ideas for contemplating, listening, and things to do. This site, which John Roberto created, and there's lots more here than prayer and spirituality, but I'm just going to focus on some of the ideas here to give you an example of what's available. So this site, specifically the one on prayer and spirituality, is designed for people either who are just getting started or need a refresher, or for people who are more confident in their spirituality and are looking to keep on growing, and also opportunities for people who want to go even deeper. So again, it pays attention to one size doesn't fit all. So some of there's 9 different experiences here. Just a couple of them are, this one talks about a program that's available at the parish, but gives opportunities of different ways they can participate. So they can participate in person, watching it on YouTube, watching it on the parish website, or using the guides that are accompanying it for their personal use. This experience also is a book study, but again, you'll notice there's many ways to participate. Meeting at the parish, joining a book group that meets in homes, hosting a book group, or doing a book study online. This experience that's suggested that people can choose from is an e-course, which could be done individually or with small groups. This experience provides ideas for ways that people can find an app for daily prayer. So it's a playlist that people can pick and choose from. And the 6th strategy is to remember that in all we do, that we need to think outside the box, to be creative. For some people, I think, they have 11 commandments. And the 11th commandment is, but we've never done it that way before. We've always done it this way. And so, can we start thinking outside the box? One example, or one thing to remember about that, is to remember that adult faith formation happens in all kinds of experiences, in all kinds of occasions. So often, I think, when we first think about adult faith formation, we think about a lecture series, and that certainly has its place. But there are so many different ways to learn, to provide ongoing formation. As well as there's so many different methods to use. Again, a lot of times we revert back to a workshop or a lecture. But what are the other ways we can do adult faith formation? And how can we incorporate some of these into a workshop or a lecture series? Drama, art, music, prayer. In the last session, people mentioned several times the U.S. Bishop's pastoral letter, "Our hearts were burning within us." I think that we as adult faith formation leaders are keepers of the flame. I think our role is to always ask, what are we teaching people? Because in reality, all that we do in parish life is forming people, is teaching people. So when we come up with a new program, a new activity, a new guideline, a new rule, can we be the ones to ask the staff, the parish council, the commissions, if we do this, what are we teaching people? Because they are going to learn. Because adult faith formation happens in all kinds of ways. And just one example of creativity is what this parish did to invite all parishioners to participate in small group book discussions during Lent. And so to heighten the interest, to get people involved, about 5 weeks before Lent, at liturgy, at all the liturgies on the weekend, at the end of liturgy, they gave out several copies of the book to anybody who wanted them. And they invited people to take them home that week and to read it, or read parts of it, highlight parts that they found interesting, write notes in the margin, and then to bring the book back the following week. So they did. And then that week, those people stood up who had the book, and the presider asked the assembly, who would like to take the book for the following week? And so people who had just finished it walked over and gave it to somebody else. And so they took it home and did the same thing. They read it, they wrote things in the margins, they highlighted things, and then they brought it back. And this continued for 5 weeks. So each copy of that book made its way into 5 different homes. What that did was, looking at the book, having the book in their hands, as well as seeing the highlighting and the thoughts from other people that were written in the margins, it made people very interested. It encouraged them to want to read it more and also to talk about it with others. So a lot of times when we go to launch something, we just tell people, okay, we're doing this and it's a good thing, so sign up. But the creativity of this parish to get people really interested. So what are ways that we can do that? So these are the 6 broad suggestions. There's certainly lots more. And the handout, as I said at the beginning, has many examples of how these possibilities are working in one or more parishes. Okay, so Ruth will take over and share some of her thoughts and experiences.
Thank you, Janet. Let me see. So, thank you, Janet. So here, I hope to share with you 5 recommendations to keep in mind. Now, specifically, I'm going to focus these recommendations within an intercultural context, not only Latinos, but perhaps in some areas, yes, the focus will be more on with the Latinos. And as I go through every recommendation that it is working, in adult faith formation. And actually, I will expand it, 40 and above, we started with that. However, it works actually with younger people also. So even children. So even though the focus was for adults, yes, it's working with adults, but they can be applied actually, for all ages. So the five areas that I hope to recommend will be the fifth encuentro process, a methodology, see, judge, act, popular religiosity, or another way to refer to this is popular piety, a methodology for sharing within a small group, mutual invitation, and especially in an intercultural sharing. And then a word about regarding the need or the resources that we have available of regarding intercultural competencies for ministers. So I'm going to start with the encuentro process and the fifth encuentro process. Again, I'm just give you, perhaps you have been aware, perhaps you have not been aware, but this is a resource that I believe sometimes we're not fully integrated in our efforts of evangelization. So encuentro, first of all, a quick translation will be encounter, the fifth encounter. So the theme for this process has been, it continues to be. I'm going to say that it's still working and it's still very relevant. Missionary disciples, witnesses of God. So a little bit more about this. What is this encuentro process? The goals of this process was to encourage the missionary activity, a process of consultation that is started from the grassroots. We're going to be looking at that, starting at the parish level. Another goal of this process is to identify leaders, specifically in this case within the Latino community. So just this encuentro process is specific, it started for the Latinos in the United States. And also the identification of best ministerial practices. And of course, evangelization will be one, faith formation at all levels, for youth, for adults, and so on. Here you have a summary of what went on. And again, this process took years, and it started before the synodal process. So actually, when the synodal process came, we were asked to get engaged into the synodal process. Those parishes, those dioceses, those people that were already involved with the fifth encuentro, it was easy. It was easy to blend it. So again, this is a process that is started from the grassroots. So you have a parish, diocesan, episcopal regions, finally the national level. At each of these process, at each of these levels, a document was published, and a document of about what are some of the priorities, the concerns for Latinos in the Catholic Church. So as you can tell, again, I was very blessed to be involved at every level of this process. And in 2018, we celebrated the national encuentro. I'm going to use the word encuentro. So through a process of consultation, we're engaging all the different communities, different ages, interests, documents. A document finally was published about what are the recommendations that we have to bring to the Church of the United States. Of course, because of COVID, this was delayed, these recommendations. However, finally, when the recommendations were published here, those recommendations were shared with the national church, of course, but they went back. They went back to the Episcopal regions, to the diocese, and again to the parishes. And this is the time when the synodal process started and so on. So I offer you, you have not been aware of this process. I offer you as a resource. Why? Because as we know, and if we don't know, all the resources, the whole Encuentro process was done bilingual, English and Spanish. So all the resources are available in both languages. The sharing process also was bilingual. Why? Because some of our Latino communities, especially the young, are more comfortable with English. So again, all the resources, and I would like to call your attention. Okay, let me think. I need to slideshow, especially to the conclusions, and I'm going to take you to that page. And again, the handout will have these links and so on. But again, there are free resources. Again, we have them in English and Spanish. I'm not going to lead you through that. But again, here we have, the work is done. What is what, in this case, youth, Latino youth are saying, what are the priorities in ministry that we need to focus? In family life, those of you that perhaps are involved with family life. Immigration, of course, will be another area. But so, and this document that gathers all the process of consultation can give a resource, again, not only for Latinos, but it's for the whole church to engage in our strategic plannings, not only in lay formation, in leadership formation, in youth ministry. So I encourage you to look into this process and of the encuentro, so that it continues to be. Now let me see. Let me get out of here. Linked to the encuentro process, to the encuentro process is the methodology of See, Judge, Act. Why? Because throughout this consultation process, at a parish level, diocesan, episcopal, and national, the methodology used throughout this process was See, Judge, Act. Connecting faith with our lives, as Sister Janet mentioned, have the Bible in one hand, have my phone in the other hand. What's going on? But specifically for the encuentro process, this I want to focus on this the historical context, what's going on in the reality of the person. So briefly, in this process, seeing the social analysis, how a particular situation has developed over time, and what are the structures that relates to that situation. So in the seeing section of this methodology is looking at what's going on, describing it, but also thinking, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And who are the people that we should be engaging in this dialogue? Who should we be looking for to listen to their experiences? So, and then we move to the next step of this methodology, the judging, evaluating the situation in light of our faith, and specifically of Catholic social teaching, the sciences and the traditions. So it's not really this step is not judging as what's good, what's bad, or evaluation, but it's more of how do we connect our faith, or specifically our Catholic social teaching, with what's going on in the situation. And finally, not finally, the third step will be, what can we do about it? So we have seen the situation, we have we are aware of what our faith is saying, what the science is saying. So what steps can we do now according to our reality? So this See, Judge, Act are really the three steps from the original, from the origins of this methodology by Cardinal Joseph Cardigan, trying to connect faith and action. A little more on this methodology. Hopefully, this is the methodology that has been used for discernment in Latin America since the 1970s by the bishops in Latin America. Pope Francis, of course, being a bishop from Latin America, is very familiar with this methodology. We can identify these steps, See, Judge, Act, in the document of Laudate Si. You know, if you are not familiar with it, Laudate Si is following this See, Judge, Act methodology. Within the Latinos community, I smile. You know, we have added a celebrate within the. So now this period of celebration. Especially in the United States. Why? Because sometimes we can feel overwhelmed with, oh my goodness, there's so much to do about, you know, when we identify what's going on in especially our social structures and what's happening and how can we take steps. So now we have been at least within the Latinos, through the Encuentro process, but any time that we're using See, Judge, Act is we celebrate, we don't wait for the end. We celebrate throughout the whole process. We celebrate the small wins, the small action steps that we are doing. And another step that has been added is always evaluating. How are we doing in this as we plan, as we strategize our action steps that could be short-term and long-term? Many of the resources for small groups also, besides the fifth Encuentro, are following this methodology of See, Judge, Act. I wanted also to point out that through the fifth Encuentro, these resources, this methodology, were implemented in small groups. Small groups often were implemented in homes. Sometimes the parish, but most of the times they were done in homes. Again, another way that there was an opportunity for listening to one another, but also I was remembering, brought up, Sister Janet was, I think one of the questions that I saw in the chat was about interest, intergenerational opportunities, learning from those who have more experience. So this was before COVID. It was good to, it was enriching to see how, as this Encuentro process was implemented through this methodology, how sometimes the young people, teenagers, you know, will join the group of that was following the procedure, or young adults, or even sometimes young children, you know, could be part of the dialogue at a certain level. So the advantage of having this sharing within the context of home, and even though they can be also implemented in the parish. But through the fifth Encuentro, in my experience, when I saw it implemented, was mostly at homes. Okay. Popular religiosity. Or popular piety. In front of you, you have some of the practices, devotional practices, yes, mostly from the Latino community. I did that, I put the one from the Filipino, but I'm presenting it to you as an opportunity to engage these devotions, these popular devotions in whatever we're doing in our level of faith formation with adults, with children, with youth. And with the purpose of, number one, affirming the cultural diversity of our church. Affirming the person in I'm going to put Simbang Gabi. You know, if the Filipino devotion of Simbang Gabi, that is a novena of masses during Advent, is those who celebrate, or those who are familiar within the Filipino community, is an opportunity to affirm cultural diversity. And the other one is, let's remember that Catholic means universal. So are we really portraying this universal perspective in our Catholic Church? As I say, oh, but I don't have Filipinos in my parish, or in my catechetical formation with youth. No, I don't have Latinos, or in my adult group. And so I encourage you that regardless if they are Latinos, Filipinos, or any other group, Asians, incorporate some of these devotions, because, and in that way we are manifesting the universality of our Catholic Church. So that will be something that I encourage you. For instance, I'm going to use Las Posadas. Las Posadas at Simbang Gabi are two practices that are celebrated during Advent. And again, when as Sister Jana mentioned, the creativity. This is a novena of masses and so on, but sometimes I've seen it in parishes, perhaps only one day, celebrate a one Simbang Gabi, or one posada in our parish as an opportunity to celebrate the diversity of the Catholic Church. Another Marian devotions, I wanted to bring that out. The many titles of Mary, the many titles of Mary. Another opportunity to affirm cultural diversity, to learn from one another. I'm going to bring, I've seen parishes celebrating the many titles of Mary under Our Lady of Lamont from the Vietnamese community, Our Lady of Korea, and so on. And again, not because we have Koreans in our parish, so but because we are universal church. The Via Crucis from the Latino community, that they have this custom of go out in procession and give witness that we are proud of our faith. So perhaps just another way that incorporate in practice, of course, but also bring awareness to these various devotions. I put here also the Lunar New Year, which is, how can we incorporate that? But the Lunar New Year is a very important celebration for many of our Asian Catholics, Vietnamese, Korean, and how can we incorporate or that into our programs. And that one way is engaging those who know about these devotions. Invite them. What can we do about it? You know, so the Day of the Dead, November 2nd, building an altar in remembrance of the dead. For those of you that perhaps are working specifically with Latinos or any other cultural groups, this brings a sense of pride, a sense of affirmation that I have something to bring. If I see San Lorenzo, a Filipino saint, or if I see Charlie Rodriguez, a Puerto Rican blessed, among the saints that are being celebrated, that brings so much a self of affirmation. And I'm bringing that to you as a recommendation, actually, from the conclusions of the 5th Encuentro. And again, this will require a whole workshop. So just wanted to bring that to you as an awareness. How are we manifesting the universality of our Catholic Church? Not because we have Latinos or Asians in front of us, but because our church is universal. Another tool that I want to share with you is for sharing is mutual invitation. And again, you can find a little more on those links. This is a methodology by Eric Law. And again, this is the methodology has been created specifically to work within intercultural context. However, it can be used in any small groups. And the piece that I want to focus on this here is that when we are in a small group, some of us, again, this is the intercultural context piece, for whatever reasons, like I'm aware, I speak English with an accent, and I'm comfortable with that. But again, some of us, for what cultural context and so on, we may not feel as confident as speaking up in a small group, as sharing. So this methodology gives everybody an opportunity to have a voice, to be invited. So again, this works best with small groups around 5, 8, even 10 people. And the key piece is that the person needs to be invited by name. Once the person has been invited by name, the person can share or say, I pass. After sharing or passing, the person can invite another person. This goes beyond culture, but some of us take more time processing our thoughts. And some of us process our answer while talking. I'm one of those persons that I need time to process. Once I'm ready, I can share. But what happens is that by that time, probably 2 or 3 people have been talking, and then the time is up. And then I couldn't share, and so on. So this tool allows everybody to get a chance. If you're ready to talk, you can talk. But if you're not ready to talk, you can say, I pass, and always invite. And not while the person is talking, nobody interrupts. At the end, once everybody has had a chance, invite those who have passed. So again, so they can have an opportunity. If the time still allows it, then the dialogue can be open and for, oh my goodness, to share questions. Oh, when you said this, something came up to mind, or so on. So I offer you this as a tool for any kind of setting. However, especially in intercultural context, this works because some of us are more don't have that confidence or are more aware of our limitations, either in language that I might not know, and my voice is not that loud. But this methodology offers an opportunity for everybody to share their thoughts, their perspectives. And finally, just very briefly, just want to bring your awareness that the Conference of Bishops here in the United States since 2012, but by 2014, they have resources available for us regarding intercultural competence for ministries. Again, I give you a link. Of course, the book is available. I'm not going to go through all the book, but just to bring awareness that we as ministries of a very diverse church in the United States, I don't think I need to tell you about our diversity continues increasing, and we need some tools. And again, we have goodwill, and we want to be inclusive, and everybody is welcome. However, we need some tools. Mutual invitation is one of those tools that actually is part of this process of that the Conference of Bishops has brought to us in regarding to building multicultural competences for ministries, and regarding diversity, how various ways of how people learns, how people faces the different perspectives regarding leadership, communication, and conflict. And yes, also the obstacles for this effective intercultural living and the reality of racism, prejudice, and discrimination. As Janet brought up at the beginning, and I brought it up with See, Judge, Act, are we providing those safe spaces to talk about those sensitive realities that we are living in the United States? And how can we talk about these realities that most of us are uncomfortable with, but we are called to talk about it, especially in our intercultural church today? And I think those are the 5. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Those are the, I think I can stop sharing. Those are the 5 areas that within formation I wanted to share with you. And again, they're focused a lot within intercultural context. However, they can be used for any kind of setting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sister Ruth. We're just gonna get set up here in a minute. And get Sister Janet back. There we go. We've got a few minutes remaining, so there were a number of questions in the chat. But what I thought from both presentations, I thought what might be really helpful to people is a next steps kind of thoughts. Like, so I'm thinking about Sister Janet's key points. What would be my next steps in my parish? I'm thinking about the huge area of intercultural communication, relationships, ministry, faith formation. What are my next steps, Sister Ruth? So Janet, why don't you kind of launch us things that I should kind of takeaways that I should take away from this session that would help me kind of begin to incorporate some of those key ideas that you mentioned.
I think a couple of things, and they're all interrelated. I think one thing is to remember that adult faith formation is not a Lone Ranger ministry. If we're doing it alone, yeah, we might do some good things, but I don't think it's going to last. So who are the people that can be invited to work with us, to be committees, to be a committee even for one project or one area? And coupled with that is, I think that I've found this myself, as well as talking with others, is I think the Ministry of Adult Faith Formation can be overwhelming because there are so many needs today. In the olden days, if we did an altar society and a holy name society that took care of all the men and women in the parish, that's not true today in any way. So it can be overwhelming. So I think take one step at a time. Choose one thing that you hear your people talking about of concern to them and zero in there. And then coupled with that, I think our task is to work ourselves out of a job. So set up a process, set up a program, set up a support group, and then turn it over to someone else who you can work with, and encourage them and give them the skills that they can continue that, so that you can then go on and begin something else. I think those were some of the first things that came to my mind, John, that I think are overarching all of the other things that Ruth and I said.
And it's important to remember that they're adults and they bring all kinds of competencies and abilities and experience to this. Yes.
Exactly.
Sister
Life
Ruth,
experience.
Sister Ruth, help us with next steps to be interculturally aware, interculturally more competent, how we bring that perspective to adult faith formation.
First thing I will recommend is look at who is at your table or your team, who is making decisions, who helping you plan, and perhaps ask yourself who is missing. Who should be we inviting? What perspective or what voice, perhaps for what we have not been aware of. So I think that let's always keep that that question: who else should be here? Either with age-wise or, but specifically in this context, in regarding of ethnicity and culture and so on. So I will say I'll encourage that. Let's look at who is at the table of decision making and who should we be inviting.
Once I've kind of figured that out, what would be my next step?
Oh, and then
I've got people. I kind of got people assembled, so to speak. What do I do now? I mean, where are some starting points if I've got people around the table and we're listening to each other? So I want to add that part.
Mm-hmm.
Sister Ruth, I was just your kind of your next move.
Oh, the next move, once you have these people, I will say, I don't want to use the word evaluate, but I will say, yeah, look at everything that you're planning. Where do we need it? Where we are affirming the cultural diversity for Catholic Church, or where we are not, and being honest. And let's look at where do we need help. And at this point, as I said, there are many resources are available from the Conference of Bishops.
Last thoughts from each of you. Janet?
As I listened earlier today to the first presentation on young adults, and then even thinking about this one, I think that the telling of stories is so crucial. Listening to one another and accepting other people, helping other people to feel like they belong by listening to their stories. And so in anything that we do in adult faith formation, are we doing that? How are we providing that? This certainly happens, hopefully, automatically in small groups, because that's what small groups are set up to do. But if we're doing other things, other opportunities, how are we giving people a chance to participate and feel listened to and tell their story. Because their experience of God, when they reiterate their experience of God, it becomes more real for them, as well as the people who are listening. It might not be their exact experience, but when I listen to another's experience, it enhances mine too.
Thank you. Sister Ruth, closing thought.
And the importance of context. And I think it's related also with what Janet is saying about the stories, but social context what is so important in an intercultural setting. How do we give opportunities to share that context of my life? I mean, could be through stories. And even before, how do we find God in my story? Either in my context of struggle, or in my context of, in this case, of being an immigrant or being Asian American and so on. But bringing God to the context that I'm already living in, I think that's very important, especially through this methodology of see, judge, act. But I think just emphasizing the piece that Janet brought up, like the Bible and the phone and the news. But that is even more relevant when we are talking about our cultural diverse church.
Yeah. Thank you to both of you for this journey through adult faith formation. So huge, so big. We want to thank all of you for participating with us. Some of you have been with us for 2 days. If I could give out an award, I would give out awards to you for participating. But thank you to Sister Ruth, Sister Janet, for the insight, the wisdom that you share with us, and then the practicality of methodologies and approaches that we can use and use in a variety of different ways in adult faith formation. Again, the videos will be available tomorrow. The materials, the PowerPoints, the handouts are online. I will save the chat. There's some great ideas in there that you'll be able to do. It'll be in a Word document you can download. Thanks to all of you for participating in the first, if you will, 2-day online conference from NCCL. We'll be doing another online conference in May. News will be out in the beginning of March for that. And then we'll be doing another one in November. And just want to, again, say for events, we will have 7 convocations around the country on our theme of Journey Towards the Future of Catechesis. So we hope you join us. They're a 2-day event, a lot more information beginning in March about that. So you're all on the mailing list. You'll get the news about all this. So thank you for supporting NCCL and for participating. And again, thank you, Sister Janet and Sister Ruth. Have a wonderful.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.